Stop. Let go. Late at night during a visit to my in-laws' home, I was suddenly dragged into the storage room by my unmarried brother-in-law. His breath was ragged, and when I resisted, he covered my mouth and pinned me down.
Don't make a sound. Listen to what I say.
In that tense moment, I couldn't defy him. Then, 3 minutes later, I heard voices outside, my husband and a crowd. Unable to seek help due to fear, I braced myself for the worst. My name is Emily Brown, and I'm 29 years old. While working as a nurse in a city hospital, I lived with my husband. I met my husband Henry, who is 3 years older, through a marriage agency.
I hear Virgo people are compatible with me. I'm glad to have met you, Emily.
When he said during our first meeting, I thought he was an unusual person, but other than that, there were no particular issues with Henry. He works for a well-known company and has a kind personality. We dated for a year and then got married. Henry's family lives in a remote mountain village, where they run a large-scale farming business with relatives. His parents are respected figures in the area, and his mother, who is the head of the family, holds a position of authority among the relatives. Despite the distance, I liked them because they always treated me kindly. Since our marriage, we occasionally visit Henry's hometown together, maintaining a comfortable distance. It was during our second year of marriage with Henry when something happened. Feeling unwell, I went to the hospital, where I discovered that I was pregnant. When I shared the news with my husband, he jumped for joy. Henry exclaimed,
Way to go, Emily. I'm incredibly happy.
He hugged me tightly, and I felt enveloped in happiness.
We should tell my parents right away.
So that weekend, we visited his family home. Henry announced,
Mom, Dad, Emily is pregnant.
His parents welled up with tears of joy upon hearing the news.
Congratulations, Emily. I'm genuinely thrilled.
Even my usually reserved father-in-law smiled and said,
That's wonderful.
Grateful for my in-laws' warm reception, I replied, Thank you very much.
Emily, is it true that you're pregnant?
Suddenly, I heard a voice from behind, and when I turned around, there stood Noah, my brother-in-law, in sweatpants. Noah, 6 years older than Henry, usually led a reclusive life at my in-laws' home. His unkempt hair and somewhat disheveled appearance gave off an eerie vibe as he stared at me in surprise. I replied, Yes, Noah. I'm pregnant. We had never spoken properly before, and he hadn't even attended our wedding. His sudden approach left me flustered. Upon hearing my response, Noah widened his eyes and promptly retreated to his room. My mother-in-law consoled me.
Don't mind him. He's an otherworldly recluse who rarely offers congratulations.
My husband added,
Yeah, he has always been eccentric. Just think of him as non-existent.
Despite their reassurances, I couldn't shake off my discomfort. Since our marriage, whenever we visited my in-laws' home, Noah would fixate on me with dark eyes, leaving me with an eerie feeling. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that I harbored a strong aversion toward Noah. That day, bidding farewell to my in-laws, we returned to our home. After that, my morning sickness began, but Henry supported me diligently. He accompanied me to prenatal checkups and shared in the joy of our baby's healthy development. He was so protective that it could almost be called overprotective, always looking out for me.
Emily, don't push yourself too hard at work. Your body isn't just yours anymore.
I chuckled and replied, Don't worry, I've already talked to my workplace, and they've lightened my workload. I eagerly awaited the day when I could give birth to our child. About a month after our last visit to my in-laws' home, something happened.
Hey, Emily. Let's go back to my parents' place next week.
His words caught me off guard, as I was still dealing with morning sickness and wanted to focus on work. I initially declined. However, Henry persisted.
There's a local festival, and lots of relatives will be there. We need to attend as a couple.
But, didn't we just visit recently?
This time, I really want you to come. I promise we'll go, so get ready.
Despite my attempts to gently refuse, Henry remained stubborn. Then, my mother-in-law called.
Emily, I don't expect you to do household chores while you're pregnant. I just want you and Henry to enjoy the festival. Please come back.
With my mother-in-law's words, I couldn't refuse. I agreed to visit their home once again. After traveling for several hours to my in-laws' home, Henry's parents welcomed me with great joy.
You've come at just the right time. Tonight is the pre-festival celebration. Eat to your heart's content.
The table was filled with my favorite dishes, and they treated me lavishly. She continued.
Tomorrow, more relatives will gather, but you don't need to do anything. Just enjoy the festival.
When I looked at Henry, he smiled kindly, and I felt relieved. Despite my initial hesitation, I'm glad I came. Looking forward to tomorrow. With those thoughts, I drifted off to sleep on the bed in the guest room. However, after what seemed like several hours, I was abruptly awakened by a strong pull on my arm. I found myself being dragged into the storage room across from the guest room. In the dim light, I confirmed the person pulling my arm. It was none other than my reclusive brother-in-law, Noah. A chill ran down my spine. Trapped in the storage room, I regained my senses. Stop. Let go. I screamed with all my might, but Noah covered my mouth and pinned me against the wall. Feeling my virtue threatened, I struggled desperately, but his strength was overpowering, and I couldn't escape. Noah commanded.
Don't make a sound. Listen to what I say.
Silenced, I managed to nod in response. As I was trapped for about 3 minutes, I suddenly heard voices outside, my husband and many relatives conversing. Despite wanting to seek help, I judged it dangerous to defy Noah, so I remained silent. As the distant presence faded and quiet settled in, my brother-in-law stared at me intently.
Enough talking. Just follow me.
He handed me a bag containing valuables, and we made our way through the backwoods. There, a car awaited us. When he got into the driver's seat and told me to, I also got into the car. What on earth is going on? He then began to speak, revealing something truly horrifying. I can't believe it. Trembling with fear and anger, I listened. 3 days later, Noah led me back to the village, and I opened the front door of my in-laws' home.
Emily. Where were you? I called multiple times, and you didn't answer. Disappearing like that.
My husband, who had arrived at the entrance, suddenly shouted at me. Perhaps it wasn't surprising, considering I hadn't returned his calls that day. My in-laws looked shocked by Noah's presence next to me.
Emily, you were with Noah for these 3 days? What's going on?
As Noah and I entered the house, we faced them in the living room.
Hey, why don't you say something instead of staying silent? What's going on here? Why are you with my brother?
I took something out of my bag and placed it on the table. Henry, please divorce me.
What?
Both my husband and in-laws were wide-eyed as they looked at the signed divorce papers I handed over.
Why the sudden divorce? I've been kind to you, a good husband, haven't I?
I met Henry's gaze as he frowned. I know everything now. No need for pretense.
What?
Who's the sacrificial victim? Actually, when I was trapped by my brother-in-law in the storage room, I faintly overheard a conversation. It was my husband and other relatives saying, "The sacrificial victim is missing, find them." You did indeed refer to me as a sacrificial victim. Furthermore, didn't you order the relatives to find me, make me smell some substance, and then tie me up and bring me back, Mom? As I calmly recounted this, both my in-laws and Henry seemed taken aback.
Huh? What are you talking about? Were you half asleep?
Oh dear, Emily, you're saying such strange things.
At that moment, I looked directly at them. I asked Noah about the wolf faith of the clan. As we fled in the car, my brother-in-law explained that nearby relatives and those living in the area worshipped something called the wolf. They held festivals to celebrate abundant harvests, offering harvested crops and more. However, during years of poor harvests, a different type of offering was made to pray for prosperity. When I asked, "What kind of offering during poor harvests?" he hesitated.
A pregnant woman born under the Virgo sign. Sacrificing her is believed to bring prosperity.
I was stunned by this unbelievable tale, but the strange behavior of my husband, in-laws, and relatives confirmed that Noah wasn't lying. Apparently, this year's harvest was exceptionally poor. So, you plan to sacrifice me, right? I questioned Henry, who continued to deny it.
Hey, it's 2024. You were just being teased by Noah. We wouldn't actually do something like that.
But the next moment, my brother-in-law pulled out a voice recorder and played it.
The poor harvest this year is serious. Perhaps the wolf is angry. We need to make an offering soon.
In that case, let's offer my wife, Emily. She's a Virgo and pregnant.
Well done, Henry. You've thought this through for the family.
Then, during the next visit, we'll target her in the middle of the night.
The recording revealed their strategy to capture me, orchestrated by my husband, in-laws, and relatives. As they listened, Henry and his parents turned pale.
Hey, did you secretly record us?
My husband lunged at Noah, attempting to snatch the voice recorder. But my brother-in-law deftly evaded him, glaring silently at Henry and his parents. I contacted the marriage agency, you know. Heard you had a strong preference for Virgo women. Did you marry me with the intention of sacrificing me from the start? When I pressed further, my husband finally snapped, smirking.
Well, if the harvest hadn't failed, we'd still be a couple. But now that it has, sacrificing you is only natural, isn't it?
Do you even realize what you're saying? You were willing to sacrifice our unborn child.
This is necessary for our family. It can't be helped.
Where did the kind-hearted husband go? Before me stood Henry, fully immersed in the twisted tradition, wearing a malevolent grin. Wolf. I won't be a victim of such absurd faith. I'm divorcing you and escaping. Write up the divorce papers. As I shouted, my mother-in-law raised her eyebrows.
How dare you mock the wolf? You wretched wife.
My father-in-law and husband stood up, gripping my arms from both sides.
We haven't completed the ritual yet. Even now, we'll sacrifice you.
Pinned down by them, my mother-in-law approached, holding a cloth soaked in some substance. However, in the next moment,
Don't move.
with that shout, a detective burst into the living room. My husband and in-laws froze in shock at the sudden police intrusion. Noah and I have been discussing everything at the major police station in town. Today, the detective is escorting me. There's an ongoing investigation in the neighborhood. Upon hearing my words, my mother-in-law widened her eyes and looked at Noah.
You talked to the police.
Yeah, I spilled everything. My fiancé was also sacrificed.
But my brother-in-law's revelation wasn't just about the wolf faith. 10 years ago, during another year of poor harvest, his fiancée, a woman named Sophia, was sacrificed by the family. Noah had tried to save her. She was pregnant with his child, but he ended up locked away, not knowing where to turn. Losing his fiancée drove him to mental anguish, and he became a recluse.
I regret not being able to save Sophia. That's why I pretended to be aloof all these years, watching over you to prevent another victim.
Yes, from the beginning, my brother-in-law had been trying to protect me. On the day he learned about my pregnancy, he expressed genuine concern that I might become a sacrifice. And all his actions that day were aimed at helping me escape.
Henry, you've been steeped in the wolf faith for years. When I found out she was a Virgo, it sent shivers down my spine.
You're going too far.
And what about Sophia? You were behind that too. Trying to sacrifice Emily, even her. None of you are human. You're monsters.
As the police apprehended my in-laws and husband, they glared at Noah and me with hatred.
Finally, your crimes are exposed. Let this wretched house fall.
Facing them, my brother-in-law's eyes met theirs, and they shouted, "This is absurd." Suddenly, another officer hurried over and whispered something to the detective.
We've just discovered multiple skeletal remains in what appears to be a shrine deep in the mountains on your property. Can you provide more details?
Oh. It's over.
My in-laws turned pale and slumped in defeat. Henry fixed me with bloodshot eyes.
This is all your fault. Don't think you'll get away with this.
I won't forgive you for sacrificing so many lives for this ridiculous faith. Surrender quietly and pay for your sins. I directed my final words at him. Afterward, my in-laws and husband were led away, shouting. When I glanced at my brother-in-law, tears streamed down his face. Subsequently, a police investigation revealed that the family had been conducting rituals for over a century. When they lacked a suitable female relative, they abducted victims from elsewhere to serve as sacrifices. Among the skeletal remains found, one belonged to Sophia, who had gone missing. Both my in-laws and Henry, along with other relatives involved in the incident, were arrested. The case received significant media attention, and their ancestral home is undoubtedly on the brink of ruin. My in-laws and husband are now behind bars, unlikely to emerge anytime soon. My brother-in-law, uninvolved in the events, will start a new life in the city. He spoke of living in remembrance of Sophia, sounding somewhat lonely. As for me, the divorce from Henry was finalized, and I moved back to my parents' house. My child was born safely, and with my parents' support, I navigate the challenges of motherhood. Moving forward, I intend to face life with strength and resilience.
How did you find this story? Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Until next time.